Jamie Dimon, ladies and gentlemen, talking tariffs and the state of the economy. CEO of the biggest bank in the world. I don't know about the world, but definitely the United States of America. Let's get into it, what he has to say. This is him appearing on Fox News and talking about what is happening financially and how things are playing out as far as tariffs.
Welcome back. Let's check markets here. Futures are indicating a decline of better than 700 at the opening of trading, about an hour and 15 minutes away. That's down almost 2%. The Nasdaq's down 263, 1.5%. President Trump's reciprocal tariffs took effect at midnight last night, and China is retaliating again this morning. It is announcing an 84% tariff on all U.S. goods after President Trump confirmed that the U.S. will move forward with a tariff of 104% on Chinese goods. Beijing also adding 6 U.S. companies to its, quote, unreliable entity list and 12 companies to its, quote, export control list. J.P. Morgan Chase Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon releasing his annual letter to shareholders this week, writing, tariffs raise prices and slow down economic growth. We are here now with the man himself to talk more about the backdrop in this Fox Business exclusive. J.P. Morgan Chase Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon. Jamie, great to see you.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And you know, congratulations on this incredible career and your leadership. We appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
You've seen so many crises in your days before, financialcrisis.com, et cetera, et cetera. How does this moment in time compare to those?
Yeah, well, it's nothing like '08. Okay, so in clarity, nothing. And the 2000 .com thing was very brief. I mean, it lasted like 9 months or something like that. So,
but how did the financial crisis when you almost paid $2 a share for Bear Stearns?
Yeah, we paid 10.
I know.
It was still very.
You wanted 2 initially.
You know, Paulson wanted 2. I wanted to get the deal done, and so it doesn't compare to that. The world was massively over-leveraged. There was a mortgage problem. You're going to have, you know, $500 billion or maybe $1 trillion of actual real problems. The banking system's not that leveraged today, but it's serious, and it was serious before the last election.
Now, let's stop there, because I love Jamie Dimon, and I'm glad that he broke it down the way that he broke it down. I did some reaction videos on the Anton Daniels channel, and I also talked about it here on the Millionaire Morning Show. Maybe a couple weeks ago or something like that, because everybody was saying, oh my God, it's just like 2008 or whatever, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. And I said, dog, if you wasn't old enough to be impacted, if you wasn't at least 24, 25, 26 years old, at least, at minimum, when 2008 happened, when the recession hit, when the market crashed, when the housing crisis was at its peak, you don't know what suffering looks like. This is nothing. And maybe that's where I gained my resilience. Maybe that's why some of us, because we were alive and we do understand how the markets work. We do know that things are cyclical. We did absolutely recover and we roared back and we made a whole lot of money for those that capitalized off of the market back then. Maybe that's why we have the mindset that we have today, because we lived through it, so we understand it. And we also know that this is nothing. This not even a smidget of what was happening in 2008. This is just a bunch of people whining every single day, every single year about what they don't have, but they have jobs, they have opportunities, they still working, they running up a bag, they got eggs that's $4 or $5, whatever, cool. 2008 was catastrophic. Catastrophic. I mean, the world might as well have ended in my mind at that point. The world might have well ended in my mind at that point. This is not 2008. This ain't even close to 2008. People were killing themselves in 2008. They were offing themselves and jumping off of a building and cashing out at the lowest possible point inside of the market, and it was the dumbest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life.
We have a huge, complex geopolitical situation, huge fiscal deficits, not just here, but around the world, sticky inflation, which I personally think will not go away so quick. And then you have, you know, what's going to happen to tariffs, what's going to happen to trade, what's going to happen. So, you know, tariffs and trade are just part of that mix. They don't completely stand alone.
So what do you think about the tariff plan?
I think it is perfectly reasonable for someone to say that trade was unfair. There were unfair trade things. And remember, it's not just tariffs. It's tariffs. I think they have the VAT wrong, how they understand it, and I think they should really get a better understanding to make it easy to negotiate. But there are all these non-tariff barriers around food and energy, and then subsidies, which, you know, China is famous for. So it's totally reasonable to say we want to make trade better. But I also want to point out to the Americans, we have the best economy in the world. Our GDP per person is $85,000. China's is $15,000. So you got to put a little bit in the context. But, you know, and then, of course, when they put the tariffs in, it was way beyond what people expected. That will cause a little inflation, slow down growth. But I hope what they really do is let Scott Bessent, who I think is a professional, negotiate. And I know Japan's here, I gather Korea, Vietnam have called, and then eventually Europe. Get those things done quickly. If you want to calm down the markets, show progress in those things, and let Scott take the time. Trade deals are very large and very complex. They can't be done overnight, but you really have to have teams working them to get them right.
It sounds
So if Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of Chase, echoes the exact same sentiment as we do here at the Millionaire Morning Show, as the Trump administration, as most economists that say, yeah, you know what, we've been getting hosed, and the people that are going to suffer are the ones that are our trade partners that's doing this dirty, not the people that are over here in America, the ones that's buying the goods and services, who don't even have to buy the goods and services for overwhelming majority of the things that we think that we need that we really don't. That's just a luxury item, and it's a nice to have, but it's not a must need. If Jamie Dimon is emphasizing this exact same sentiment and he's championing Scott Bessent also, who are we to sit here and think that we have a better understanding of how money works and how the economy is going to be affected than Jamie Dimon? He's echoing the same thing that we've been communicating over the last week, the last 2 weeks, the last 3 weeks. We have to solve for it. It is very complicated. It is a negotiating tool. Other countries understand exactly where they stand in a hierarchy, and we need to play our cards exactly the way that Trump is playing it. Otherwise, your children, your children's children, and the U.S. economy is going to continue to suffer in the future. He's saying the same thing that we've been echoing for a long period of time.
It's like you're taking a calm head in the face of all of this, despite the fact that we've seen $6 trillion in market value wiped out in about a week.
Yeah, I'm taking a calm view, but I think it could get worse if we don't make some progress here. And of course, you know, trade wars, you saw China raise the rates today, you know, and people are going to get angry and they're going to have responses, and every country's got choices. So there are short-term choices, there are long-term choices. And I also want to point out, if you kind of look forward in the next, 60 days, every company is going to be telling you guys, what it means to them. I think today I saw Delta remove their guidance, and things like that will affect stock prices again. So it's not over yet. And then you've seen tremendous moves in swap prices, asset prices, treasury prices. There's a 10-year treasury auction today and how they go. So yeah, let them settle down, take a deep breath, negotiate some trade deals. That's the best thing they can do.
I want to get back to what you just mentioned, the earnings season, in a moment.
So what did he just say?
A number of CEOs.
Cool heads prevail, and just relax, and let's see how this plays out. Now, he's overseeing the overwhelming majority of people's assets inside of Chase Bank. He's not panicking. Why should you panic? But nope, Democrats is going to tell you, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Jamie Dimon is sitting here kicking it. He ain't pulling out his hair. He got his hair slicked back. He's chilling. He's slow motion, and he's still the CEO of Chase Bank.
It was just last night, and they said, I'm cutting expenses, I'm cutting my CapEx, so I want to get your take on how that plays out. But look at the 10-year this morning, Jamie. It's up almost 17 basis points. Yeah. And I just spoke with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and asked him if part of this is China selling treasuries. Here's my conversation, a snippet of it with Scott Bessent. Watch this.
There's one of these deleveraging convulsions that's going on right now in the markets, and I think it's in the fixed income market. There's some very large leverage players who are experiencing losses. They're having to deleverage. I believe that there is nothing systemic about this. I think that it is an uncomfortable but normal deleveraging that's going on in the bond market, and I expect that as we see the leverage come down, the risk managers tapping people on the shoulders, telling them to bring their books down, which is what happens every couple of years as leverage builds up, then the market will calm down.
Is China jumping treasuries to try to put pressure on this market?
Yeah, I think it works against their purposes if they are dumping treasuries, because if they're dumping treasuries, then they have to buy something else. If they sell dollars, then they strengthen their currency. And as I said earlier, they've actually been weakening their currency, which is a loser for everyone.
Connie, Jamie Dimon is actually echoing the same thing that Trump is. And Scott Bessent, who is also a part of Trump's cabinet, he's actually saying the same thing in support of Scott Bessent.
Right.
And again, when I hear all these stories that the dollar is no longer going to be the reserve currency, if you end up with the Chinese who are willing to use their currency as a trade tool, that doesn't seem like a very good reserve asset to me.
Yeah. Jamie, your reaction?
Well, he's exactly right. You have a lot of deleveraging hedge funds and players out there, which he obviously is quite experienced with things like that. And that is the initial effect. There will be other effects, and we still are the reserve currency, which will be true for a long time. But a very important point, China and Russia have made it clear they want to dismantle the...
Don't be bothered. Don't be emotional, big dog. Don't feel some type of way. I know you subscribed. I appreciate you for your subscription. I know that you're feeling some type of way because I said that I'm going on tour. Fam, don't be bitter. That's a female trait. That's a female emotion. When you let your emotions control you and you don't think logically, so you type crazy inside of the chat. Kevin with an A, just relax, big dog. Enjoy the show. But I appreciate you. Thank you for continuing to rock with us.
Post-World War II system. And I think the goal of all this trade stuff should be to make Europe and our trading partners, Japan, Korea, Philippines, stronger, not weaker, bring them closer as we build up our military. And any trade that protects military, that we should definitely do. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes about, as you know, pharmaceuticals, shipping, pharmaceutical ingredients, penicillin.
That we're so reliant on China for all of this stuff.
We can't rely on any potential adversary for things
Read
we need for
Cash
our
App
military. And so, there I'm quite sympathetic. That we should do. That's absolutely paramount.
And you wrote about this in your annual letter to shareholders this week, and you talked about national security being the #1 priority here. Right. But it takes time to get the supply chains to America. So in terms...
And when he says national security, again, I explained this, guys, to you yesterday. For those of you that's not here, we cannot be interdependent on anybody else in order for us to be able to survive inside of the United States of America. And part of that, an example of that is what happened during the pandemic when we didn't have the capacity to be able to manufacture things, and we had to literally create the capacity. I remember Ford Motor Company actually pivoted and started making the machines, the breathing machines, right? Whatever those was, the respirator machines, whatever those. Ford Motor Company was the one that started pivoting, and there was several different plants that had to spin up in order to start creating things that we needed during that time when we were dependent on China and other nations. That was also the ones that were accused of being able to of creating this virus in the first place. We have to have the manufacturing capacity. We have to have steel that's coming from the United States of America. We cannot only be supplying 18% of the aluminum that's going into these cars. It is a national security issue if our military is at a disadvantage because we don't have the infrastructure to be able to support them in a worst case scenario. That is what he's talking about.
In terms of getting this done fast, I mean, how much faster can this happen? And
even though it takes time to build up the capacity, the infrastructure, the facilities, the manufacturing, the whole 9 yards, we still have to do it.
Other way to get corporations to move supply chains here,
ventilators,
other than forcing them to it, because we've been talking about this for a long time.
You can't really force them, but like I said, there are tons of ways that people manipulate trade, but and as subsidies, and as land grants, and as guarantees. We need to do that for rare earths, pharmaceutical devices, semiconductor chips. We should do it right. I mean, we shouldn't do it in a way that wastes a lot of money.
Semiconductor chips. Why we give so much money to Taiwan, why we're competing against China for Taiwan, why we continue to add them as a part of the Department of Homeland Security, because we depend on this technology to fund and power everything, including all of the stuff that's happening within the military. We need to make our own chips. We need to make our own steel. We need to make our own cars. We need to have our own capacity. We have to do it ourselves, and we have to make sure that we build these industries not just for jobs, but also for national security. And I know that don't mean anything to y'all, but it's very, very important, because when you don't have it and you need it, it becomes a national security issue.
Money and lets corporations feed at that great tax trough or something like that. And it could be done, but it will take years. But we need to start right away. And even some of these other supply chains, a lot of companies were too reliant on one country. It'll take them.
Ford did make
respirators. You got to separate,
right.
making sneakers from making guns. One is like really important. One is, it's not as big a deal. So,
Great point.
But the point about national security is economic security, national security are almost directly related in the long run. Hopefully when these wars get resolved, and I hope in the interest of Ukraine, where they have sovereignty when it's over, and the interest of Israel, and not being constantly attacked by terrorists on 3 sides, you need to keep the economic alliance together. I think it would be in Russia's and North Korea's, Iran's, and China's interest to fragment the Western world. And I think that would be the biggest long-term mistake, and I'm talking about over 30 or 40 years. I don't want to read the book about how the West was lost.
Yeah.
I agree. Shout out to Jamie Dimon and Chase. If you want to read the rest or see the rest of that interview, you can go over to Fox Business. It is a great, great interview.